Welcome back. In this episode, which I think should be the final episode of our application, we have worked really hard to reach this level. From the last time we were able to create an invoice, we are able to view all invoices, we are able to view a single invoice, we were able even to send an email, and all that was a success. Okay, so in today's video, what I want to work on is authentication and maybe even changing some few things. So the first one is when we create a new invoice. So instead of redirecting to this invoices page where we can look at all invoices, I think we should just go to the preview. We should just go to the preview where someone can print instead of us going so many clicks to reach on the printing, because when someone creates, he comes to this page, then from this page he has to go to the detailed page to be able to print, and then even on this detailed page to print, it is somehow still we are still actually figuring out. I feel like this page of the detailed page should have only send for only those people who will be authenticated, something like that. Okay, so one thing I just want to first change is when we go to create invoice, I just want on this page to be able to actually print the invoice from here. Okay, so in our code we're just going to change some things. Let me just go to invoice, new page. Okay, so where we have this submit, the handle submit, where is it? Okay, there is this handle input change, there is handle form submit. So on this handle form submit is where we are going to change. And if you have reached at this level where you are viewing this episode, that is really you are going to be successful, because most people don't stick to a tutorial up to this point. But if you have reached at this point, then it means you are really serious and you want to learn. Okay, so where we are redirecting, here where we are pushing and we are going to this page, I think we shouldn't just push. Let's just only set this preview. Okay, so when we set the preview, then we are able to print. So we'll add one button on the preview. We'll add one button on the preview, and I defined we have just fill in something, I guess. Okay, we'll just fill in some things to see that. Just fill some things, go to the preview. And why is our preview going to just refresh? What is on this preview? I'm just going to see what is on the preview. So what I just want is I'm just going to do some fake filling, just fake filler, and then on this table. Oh, okay, so let's just we just fix that. So on this on the buttons we want to do, let's just go back to, let me minimize some of these functions. So on this handle submit, so when we make this response, okay, when we make this response of creating the invoice, we are able to create the invoice, and for now we are not capturing the response, we are only consoling the response. And if you check in our response from the API, so just go to this API on route where we are creating this invoice. I just want to do this very fast. We have a lot to cover in this video, and so let's just go to where we are creating the invoice, and let's see what we are sending back. So if you just look at what we are sending back in the response, we are actually sending back the invoice. Okay, so that means we can actually get the invoice, the ID of the invoice that was created. Okay, so you can get the ID of this invoice from this response. So I just go and get this response down here. Okay, we can just get, say, const invoice. Maybe we could just call this one as invoice data, invoice created invoice. You could just say const created invoice is equal to await response response.json. Okay, and then we could just go ahead and console this printed the created invoice. Okay, and let's just go and see. I'm just going to refresh. I'm just going to refresh and see what we're just going to get back. So I'm just going to do a fake field. Okay, I'm just going to also upload the image very fast. Okay, scroll down to where we have this logo of ours. So just click done. So I'm just going to come here, put one thing, maybe logo design, quantity 1, maybe 1000. Okay, I'm just going to click on create. Okay, so we are creating. Okay, invoice created. Now instead we are actually going on the preview page. We are not taking the person on the other page. Okay, this is good because a person at this point, he can decide to actually print. So just look at the response we get back from there. Let's look at the response. It was, let's look at the line. So it is console.log 69. So where do we have 69? Okay, 69. So I don't have anything on 69. Okay, so I have an object. Okay, I have an object which looks to be empty. Okay, which looks to be empty. 69 has an empty object, and maybe what we can just do is we can console this side, we can console the invoice. By this point, what we want really is to put a button. I'm just going to first write that button. Want to put a button here. Now we have the print, which I guess should be working. That one is really fine. Okay, now what I want is to put another button here which says view invoice. Okay, so I'm just going to go for a second here on the buttons. Okay, so we have this print button. So I'm just going to duplicate this. Okay, so just put it at the beginning here, and this one is going to be view invoice, and this one should be a link. Okay, I'm just going to change this into a link from next link, and that means we don't need a handle. I'm just going to put href instead. Okay, so this one should just be going to, for instance, invoice. Okay, it should go to slash invoice slash maybe 2. Okay, it should just be going to this. Okay, and then the icon the icon. Let me just see the button if it has appeared. Should appear, yes. So this view invoice. Okay, we can just quickly grab the icon if you don't mind. So React icons, and I'm just going to put in a file. So you can put in a file, or I think a PDF or anything can really work. Okay, so I'm just going to get any of these icons. I wanted the outline one, just get this one. Okay, let me just get this, put it there. And AI, let me just see, we have some for AI here. Put a comma. Okay, so that one should be good to go. It should change the icon here. Okay, so that is good. So you have the view invoice, and it should take us to the created invoice. Now what we want is the ID. Now what I'm just going to do is, in the route, okay, I'm just going to go back and console.log invoice. I want to really see if I can get the invoice back after creating. So I'm just going to go to edit. Okay, so I'm just going to edit this very one. So let me just say, put here as branding company, and here I'm just going to change to Grand Masters Academy. Okay, now these are the things we can just leave them. Let me just put here web design 1000, as simple as that, and let's just click on create. So what I want right now is, I want to see, okay, I want to see the, on the console, I want to see if I can get back this invoice. So the invoice, I am just getting the data here, web design. So there's something here, connect or create invoice without blah blah. Invoice is missing, argument invoice is missing. Let's go down. Seems it did not create it. Okay, where we have invoice, I think it is not creating. Let's see here, on the rows. Okay, so on the rows, when they reach on creating invoice ID, it was 3. Item description was web design. Unit, and the first one is tax, not a number. Then amount, then invoice. Do we have invoice? Let me first look in the row. So just check a second in the schema here. So in the schema for the row, we actually have the invoice. Yep, so we have the invoice ID, and then like we have invoice. Let me just drop this down. So we have this one which has notes and has this table data, and then we have this amount, and we have invoice ID, and then we have this which says invoice. Do we really need to save the invoice? I said this one is only defining the reference, but let's just check in the database. I'm just going to go database and I check if we have about we actually have all the invoices. Okay, and then let's go to the rows. Okay, we have this. So the last one, it doesn't have the last one doesn't have, I can see the here, and let's see, look at the columns. We have invoice ID. Yeah, and that's it. Okay, so what I wanted back from this was the invoice ID. Okay, I wanted invoice ID back. However much I'm having tax as NAN, I did not fill in that. They are saying here invoice is missing. Argument invoice is missing. I don't know what you're supposed to put on that when you are creating in the route here. Okay, if you look at the data for the row, we have all these this stuff. I don't know if invoice you're supposed to put there you're supposed to put that data for the invoice or not. Okay, I'm not sure about that. And if you are putting the invoice, are you putting this whole invoice, this or this invoice? So I just I just want to get back the response, and I think when you go back to the app here, we still have this object online. Where these objects come from. These ones, page 91, page preview table 71, client address. Okay, okay, I just first leave that one. We'll just handle it maybe at later stage, but we have to have this view invoice that is taking us to the invoice that has been created. Okay, the only thing I just want to work on right now is this login and register. We just get back to this one as we are figuring it out just in a second. Let's first go to this to the login and register. Okay, this one is going to take us our time, and it is something we can just figure out. The only thing just we need is we get back the response of the newly created invoice, and then we can just figure out this here. Okay, so now what I just want is just going to put I think you can even also fetch. You're just going to look at that. What I just want is right now to figure out the login and the register. So I want to put the authentication, want to put the authentication in this app. Okay, and this is making it really a big app. So you are going to add in the login and the register. So let's first go and put in these two routes. So in the just going to come here, and I'm just going to create these two pages. So in the app, I'm just going to create a new folder, one for the login, and inside the login I'm just going to put page.jsx, and I'm just going to put RFC. So this one is the H2 login page. Okay, and then I'm just going to do the same thing in the app. Just create another one which is for register. Okay, and inside it just create the page.jsx, and that one normally happens when you're building applications and you're having one functionality that is giving you hard time. You can actually first leave that functionality and then put in another, then you can come back to the other one instead of getting stuck on one thing. Okay, So you can just get on, first do the one that is moving, then when you finish it, then you can come back to this one later and then give it a thought, instead of wasting and getting stuck on it for so long. Okay. So this, I'm just going to go here, say h2, which is register. Okay. So we have the register. We just want to go and click on these pages, and I think we have already connected these pages when we created them in the navbar. So you can just go in the navbar. Let's check for a second in the navbar. You can see where we have the login is having login, and then when you scroll down here, there is this register which is also there. So we already have this. So if I click on login, it should take me to the login page, and you can see this is login. If I click on register, it should take me to the register page. Cool. Now let's talk about these two pages, the login and register. The first thing, if you're going to add in authentication, we have to understand what is going to change in the schema. That is the most important of all, the schema. So now this schema, we are bringing in the third person. So we had only two schemas. We had only this, the model of the invoice and the model of the row. So where does the model of the user comes in? Now to understand this, I'm just going to give you an example. When you go to Prisma, okay, click on quick start and click here, start with Prisma from scratch. You can change this to JavaScript, and you can scroll down, click here, connect your database, connect here on using Prisma Migrate. Okay, so they have here a schema, a sample schema they use it here. So the schema they have a post, they have a profile, and then they have a user. Okay, so this is just like a blog. As you can see, it is a post where you can have created art. You have these the content, published, author, and so if you just look at this, a user can have, if you look in the user model, a user can have an ID, can have email, a name, now can have posts, and the user can have profile. Okay, so in our case, we are going to create a user. A user can have multiple invoices. A user is the one who is creating the invoices, so we'll have a user having the invoice inside. So now we can just simply you can simply copy this. Okay, just come down here and you can just add this model. So instead of putting posts, first we're just going to change this to invoices, and then here is going to be of type invoice. Okay, just like that, and then we can remove profile. And now from the profile, what we can add is a user must register with a password. So we'll have password. Okay, and the password is of course going to be a string. Okay, now another one you can just add on the user really is the date he has been created at. So you can add this created at and updated at. Just copy these two, just as simple as that. Just add them down here, created at, and then created at, we give it a default of now. When the user is created that point, we save that date. Okay, then I think that is the only ones we want on the user. It should have email, a name, and the email should be unique. Multiple users can't have the same email. Let's fix this. So in the invoice, as you can see here in this the same thing in the post, they have the author, and then they have also this. So just copy these two fields, and these ones we are going to put them in the invoice. So just as you know, each invoice we are going to create, okay, each invoice we will have to create must have a user. Let me just remove this comment. So down here I can just add these Okay, so first of all, it must be this one. We can call it a user, and then this one we can call it a user ID, user ID, and then we have to. So the user is of type user, and the relationship is going to be the fields user ID. This one comes from the ID of the user. Okay, so this relation define the relationship between the user and this model. So you say at fields, and this what you put in this fields is the field that is in this model, which is this user ID, is going to be referencing to this ID. As simple as that. Okay, so now we have this. Now the next thing is migrating this. Now if we are going to migrate this, is going to cause some errors. So the first thing we need to go, and we can just actually empty these tables. Okay, just go to the row, check all of them, and delete these rows. So you can delete these rows, and you can also go ahead in the invoices. By the way, there's a reason why I'm deleting from the rows first. Do not delete the invoices first, it also refuse, because the invoices have rows inside, so you have to delete the rows first. So just go to this invoice and select all these invoices and delete them. Okay, so after deleting these ones, we are just going to run a migration. Okay, because we have added things in the invoice, and we have added a new model. So when we just don't delete these ones, they will not accept adding new ones. So simply delete these ones, and let's just go and run our migration. Okay, so you sure I want to delete these ones? So it is deleting. Let me just give it some a few seconds to finish the deleting. Meanwhile, I want to thank those ones who have subscribed, and if you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, please subscribe, and you can always check the content we are producing. I'll be making the content really massively because I'm planning a lot of big projects that we should build together. And when you try big projects, you start actually moving from the junior developer level going to the senior developer level. There are those people who watch tutorials 1 year, they are still watching the same tutorials. You should just leave these small projects and start working on the big projects, whether it is taking about 6 hours or even 8 hours. It is good that you concentrate on these big projects, because at the end of the day, you get the actual scenarios that happen on the real projects. Okay, so just concentrate on doing some big projects so that you learn actual things on production level. Okay, so we have these ones deleted. Right now I'm just going to go and make a migration. So you're just going to run npx prisma migrate dev dash maybe name init. So you can just run this command, and what you want is you want it to check and recreate these push the another migration to database, because we have changed the schema. And putting this user, now we'll have to first register the user before he creates the before he starts creating the invoices. And we'll also have to check some things. We'll change some things, few things. Okay, like after creating the invoice. Now when we are creating the invoice, you can see that the invoice needs the user ID. If you just go to this, you said now the invoice needs a user ID. Okay, and we'll be getting that user, I think, in the global. We'll be looking at the logged in user and then try to send with this. When we are sending the data, we have to send the user ID now. Okay, but this one we're just going to change it in our route. after so here instead, when we are having the invoice data, so the invoice data this time is going to be containing also the ID. Okay, so we'll be having the invoice data, and here when on invoice, let me just do this. So on this invoice now, it will be containing the invoice ID. So we can just say user ID. Okay, so you can just put user ID, and the user ID is going to be coming from the invoice data dot dot user ID. Okay, as simple as that. So we'll also put this, and we can make sure it is an integer by converting it to an integer. Maybe this just for the purposes of being safe, we can just say pass int. Okay, we can just say pass int of this. So this one is going to be coming from the invoice data. We attach it to the invoice data when we are just going to send it. Okay, so that is why I'm putting it there. Okay, and there's nothing we have to change in this, in the rows. And I feel like this rows dot promise is not being used anywhere. Let me check. I think we're supposed to have somewhere. Let me minimize this. Promise, yeah, there is being used here. I'm seeing rows await promise.or of the row promises actually is not there. You know, it's supposed rows, this one here, just copy this. I think this is what the error was coming from also. This is supposed to be here. Okay, and then we can have that very well. Okay, so that is great. Then we also have to change in we also have to change in fetching. So on the gate, so here what we have changed, guys, we have only added in the creating the invoice, we have added only one thing, the user ID, and to be attached on the invoice data. Okay, then now on fetching, and this is for the post. Now for the fetching, when we are fetching invoices, we just now have to fetch invoices, and we also have to have the user. At some point we'll have to send a user. This time I don't know how we are going to do it, but we have to get the user ID, and then we'll be saying find invoices where user ID is the ID, and then we get these ones. We don't want to get all the invoices. We just look at this. We don't want to get all the invoices by so many users. We want only invoices that belongs to this actual user who has logged in. Okay, but we'll worry about this later. So our tables have been created. We can now go ahead and check them. So just click on the invoice. You reset the invoice, and now we have even the user. You set the invoice has added the invoice ID somewhere. If you check after this, you must see somewhere user ID here. Okay, then we have the user. Okay, we have the email, then we have this user has all these nice things. Okay, now let's work on the forms. So the forms, we're just going to use Flowbyte. So I'm just showing you how to get these. We are doing a big project. There are some things you don't need to waste time on. For instance, creating a form, that is something which is really easy. You should concentrate on the logic. So just come here on the Flowbyte and just put in, for instance, login form. Okay, and when you click here, you will get a nice designed form. Okay, this one. So we have this sign-in form, really nicely designed. Now we'll use this one, and then We also have another one. You can put register. Okay, so after putting register, they also have the register form. Okay, there is this one, and here is the code. Okay, so you just we are going to use this one. Okay, we'll use this one. Okay, so now that is one thing. So we'll use these forms. Okay, so the only thing you just do, you simply copy the form. Okay, you copy the form. I'm just going to show you, then change these classes and you put them class names, and that's it. Now next thing you're going to use is React hook forms. Okay, so we have here, this is a website for React hook form. You're just going to use React hook form, and it is used for validation. Okay, it is used for form validation, to put validations. Now I want to show you how React hook forms work in a second, so that we just going to put these ones together in a minute. So when you click on get started, they take you to this page. The first thing is installing the React hook forms. So copy this. Okay, just go to the console. Here I'm just going to go ahead and install React hook forms. So as they are installing React hook form, I'm just going to show you how they work, or how it works. So the first thing, the React hook form, I'm just going to go down to this example. There is an example that is sorry, I don't want the sandbox, I wanted the JavaScript here. Okay, I'm just going to zoom in so that you look at this. So the first thing on React hook forms is that they give us a hook, this use form hook. Okay, they give us this use form hook, and the purpose of the use form hook, I don't know if you can see very well here. I guess you can see. So they give us this use form hook. Now this use form hook comes with a number of things. It comes with major two functions. The first function is the register function and the handle submit function. The register function, its purpose is to actually register inputs. So for instance, if you have an input which takes in first name, you can say input, then you pass the register function like this, and then you pass in the name you want to register, like this first name. And you can see the same thing to the select here. They have registered using the register function. Now the register function, after registering these fields, it passes them to handle submit. So the first thing you do, you have to create the onSubmit, and the onSubmit function is the function which is going to run when the form is submitted. When you click a button of submit, you click it, this function onSubmit is starts running. Now this one, before it is invoked, we first run this handle submit. That's why you see on onSubmit we are passing the handle submit, and then in the handle submit we pass this onSubmit function. This onSubmit function will be given data that was registered in these fields. So the input register first name, this register function gets the input, it passes it to the handle submit. Handle submit gets it as an object and passes it into the onSubmit as data. So you can see here onSubmit is having data entering, and we are consoling the data. Okay, so this is what exactly we're going to do. So let me just get the code for the register, and then we go through it. So if you just remember this invoice generator app cheat sheet, down there this is where I actually added the forms. So if you scroll down slowly, you will see somewhere where we say not Prisma. This is where you see we have this registration and login, and the first thing is the schema. We have already worked on this schema. Okay, the register page. So I'm just going to get, this is the register page. Okay, now I'm just going to get the register page with the let me see. So the register page is this one. Okay, I'm just going to get this code. I'm just going to copy this. I'm just going to update our register page. So in the register page here, and just put it here. Now in the register page, this is the other form. This one I showed you the register form. This one, where is this? This register form. This is the one that I copied. So you can either copy this and edit, or you can copy this one. I'm just going to show you. Now the form itself, there is this, all these other parts. The form itself, starting here, I put it in its own component. If you check here where the form is supposed to go, down here, I've put this component called register form. So I'm just going to go ahead and create this register form. Where is it? So in components, create a new component called register form .jsx. Okay, and in the register form component, the code for it is also down here. So when you go to this down here, I've already prepared this for the register form. Just scroll down here, and this is the register form component. So you can also copy this code, and then let's put it here. Okay, so basically this is the form. Okay, now why I'm copying it is that this logic, we haven't done any logic here. Okay, there is no logic. Putting the forms together shouldn't be really hard. With all the forms we handled in making the invoice, creating a register form, not a big deal. The big deal is actually the logic behind it. So now here you can see I'm just going to be explaining one by one. So the first thing is bring in the use form effect, this one. So this use form is the one that we have just seen in this here, this use form. So that is the first thing you bring in. You bring in the register, you bring in the handle submit. Now it has another function called reset. The reset is the one which empties the fields after you have submitted the form. And then if you want to bring in the handle errors, I've not shown you the errors. So if you scroll down on the next one, apply validation, you said if you want to apply validation, scroll down here, you will see that you have to get the errors. Okay, you have to get the errors. Just see here. Let me just go to up here to where we are rendering the errors. Okay, so on this one, so you can see we get the register handle submit. Then in the form state, we can actually get the errors. Let me just get to the one of JavaScript. Okay, and then you can see if you want to render the error, so you first register the input. So you have registered the input maybe at example, and then you can pass in the validation rules, like required true. And then if you want to show the error, you just put it down here and you say errors dot example required, and then you put the span that's going to display the error. That's how it works. So just go through ours. So I first brought in this one, these three. So register handle submit reset, and I have this. Then we have let me first minimize this. Then we go to the form. As we said, we create two functions. So you create this function on submit, which accepts data. Then this on submit function is the function you pass in on submit. You pass in handle submit, and handle submit comes from the use form. Okay, so you pass it in, and it is why you pass in this one, so that data can move. Now I'm just going to remove this action. Okay, so just go to now the actual input. So the first input we have is the name. So this is its label, and this is the input. So on the input, I first come here and I register it. So I say this register name, and then here I pass in the validation. I want this one to be required. Type text name, ID name, and then down here I can now pass in whether you leave this one required or not. So just come here and I get these errors.name here. As you can see, I can just say errors.name, and this is the name I passed in the register function, and then I can pass in the error that this field is required. Okay, and then I do the same thing to all of them. You can see the email, I registered the email, and then I went ahead and I rendered the error down. You see errors.email, and this errors, where it is coming from, it comes from also the React hook form as a form state here, and then you destructure it from there. Okay, so that's one thing. So for now, after doing that, I should now have the register function on the UI. Just go on the UI, and you can see on the register I have the function with the name, email, and password. Okay, so on submit, okay, on clicking this sign up, first thing we need is we need to get the data from the form. Okay, then we have to create an endpoint for creating a new user. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and create an endpoint that is going to register a user. So inside the API, just create a new folder called user. I'm just going to create a new folder called user. Okay, and then in the user here, create a new file called route.js, and then you can just of course put the export async function, async function. Okay, export async function and is a post. Okay, export async function, it accepts the request. So we went through this process, and the same process when you do CRUD. The advantage when you do CRUD, for instance, when you have a project, a bigger project, like when we did CRUD for the invoice, you see the structure is always remained the same. If you go to the invoice, you look at the pattern. Okay, you look at the pattern how it works. Okay, it looks at the pattern how it works. You can see we have the export async function post. Okay, it accepts the request, and then you come and do a try catch, and then the first thing is always getting data from the form, the one that has been sent from the front end. So you get the data from there, and then you can start doing all these things with the data. Okay, so this endpoint is actually also there. You can just go down here. Okay, so this is the register endpoint, and I just copy it, and I will just move it in a second so that we don't waste much time. So on this user, so API user, then route, I'm just going to create the endpoint for the post. Okay, so this is the endpoint for the post. Okay, so it is the same thing, export async function post request. Okay, so the first thing, we get data from the form that has been sent, const, name, email, password. So these are the three things we want from this form. So you can see we have name, email, password. So this is the three important data we are sending from the UI. When someone clicks send, this data should be got from the form, and then it should be sent to this endpoint. So we get that data. The first thing we do is checking if the user actually exists, because when you are registering a new user in the database, you must first check, is this new user you are creating already existing in the database, or this is a new user. So how we do it is we use the email. That's why the email was marked as unique in the schema. The reason why it was marked as unique is to make sure we have only one person in the database who is with that email. Okay, so right now what we have to do is checking if this user already exists. If he exists, then we should tell onto the UI that this person already exists in the database. Try another email. Okay, that is great. So now, after, how do we check? So of course we just write this object user exists, and then we say db.user.findUnique. So this is how we find a single person from a database, db.user.findUnique, and we are finding a user where email is equal this email that we are getting here. So this email, before we save it to the database, we first send it to the database, check, is the person, any person with database, does he exist? Okay, if he exists, if the user exists, then we do not want to continue from there. We want to return response, and I want to send a message saying the user already exists, and I send an empty user object, user as null, and then we can also give the status of 409, which means conflict. So the conflict is the user already exists in the database. We don't want to create another user of the same details. Okay, so that's the first check. So after we have checked and this person is passing this step, means this is the user does not exist, so we come to this level. So the first thing we do is actually hashing the password. Now to hash the password, we need to install a package for hashing passwords. You don't want a user password to be stored in the database when it is plain. Okay, we don't want to save a plain password the way we write it. We want to hash it. Now to hash it, we use a package called I'm just going to come here, called bcrypt. So we use bcrypt. Okay, so you can just click bcrypt npm, and this is the package here. Okay, we have this package bcrypt. Okay, so there are two functions that are very important from this bcrypt package. The first one is the hash function. So the hash function is the one which is responsible for hashing. Okay, so we have the hash function, this one, and as you can see, it is hash and takes in the plain password and then the sort. And if you read about the sort, this is like the complexity of the password. Okay, then after it has created this one will create it will hash the password. Now when you want to load back you can see, load the hash password from your password DB. Now we use the second one, which is compare. So on the login, we'll be using the compare. On the register, we use the hash. Okay, so I'm just going to install bcrypt. So just come here and copy this and go on the console here, just install bcrypt. So npm install bcrypt. So meanwhile it is installing, let's explain how this works. So as I said, hashed password is going to be await hash, and now this hash, we get this hash from the bcrypt package. Okay, then down here, okay, then where is it? So we hash it. So here we have the hashed password. Then afterwards we create a new user. Okay, so here we can create a new user. Const new user is equal await db.user.create. Now in the create, we pass in that we want to create. As you know, the user is having a name, email, and the password. Now the name and email, I'm not having them like this, because this name and the email is taking these ones that we passed in here. Okay, and then for the password, it is taking in the hashed password. Okay, and then after that, after we have created the new user, then we can console the user, and we can also return the new user. Okay, and that's it. So we can return also a message. Maybe you could just say here, and you return the message, and you say user created, maybe successfully, and then you can also pass in the user as a new user, just like that. Okay, that is good. And then if this fails, we can console the error, and then we can also return that error. So now at this point, this should be, now this endpoint is complete. Then let's see how do we get the data to send it here. Okay, so the first thing is, let me just go back to the register function, the register form component. Now in the register, as we said, the first thing is we receive data. So now the first thing we did also is to put the loading spinner. You know, we did that, the loading spinner. If you want to show the spinner when someone clicks on this button, we have to show the loading state that a user is being created. So what you have to do is you must first create this loading, set loading, and by default you set it false. Okay, and we can use this state here. We can use this state to do a lot of things. The first thing is when we start making requests to the database, then we should set loading to true. When then the request is back, we get the response, then we set loading to false. Now if you check how we are using it on the button, that is the most important part. So if you check down here on the button, we are first checking if loading is true, then we are putting this loading button. And you know where I showed you how to get the loading button, just simply go back to Byte. Okay, so you can just go back to Byte here and you can search for the button. Okay, and then on the buttons you have this, the loader, so you can scroll down here and click on this loader here, and then you have these buttons are loading. So you can just instead put this button. Okay, you can copy this code. This is exactly what I put there. So if you just go back to our code, I have this is the button. So when the loading is true, we put the loading button. When it is false, we put the normal button. Okay, and that's it. Then of course down here we already have an account. Then we are sending this person, and you can just make this one a link. Okay, just like this, and this will still work and nothing will change. Okay, so having done that, if we just go back to our form, now let's go to how we are creating this endpoint, how we are saying that at the endpoint. So let's look at this on submit function. So the first thing, we accept the data, and then we do a try catch. Okay, now in the try catch, the first thing is on top here. Before we start the request, we set loading to true because we are starting the process of sending the data. Then we create a response. Okay, and then we await fetch, and then we send on this endpoint we just created, localhost 3000 API user. This is the endpoint we just created here, API user. This is the endpoint. We send there method post headers content application JSON, and then the body we send this. So JSON.string file data. Now this data is all the data. If you can console, I also console the data here. So let me just go on top here and also console.log the data. Okay, you will see that this is an object containing all the data from the form. Okay, so we send that. When the response is back, you can get back the response data if you want that response data to see it, and then you can also get the response.ok. Now when the response is back and is okay, we set the loading to false, and then we give the toast success, user created successfully. We also implemented the toast. You know how to do that. Now we run the reset function. This reset function comes from the React hook form, and this is used to set all the inputs back to the empty. You don't want the inputs to remain with the fields, so we reset the fields, and we don't need, we can just remove this refresh. Okay, then we have this, and then we can redirect. Okay, we can here we can redirect the home page but for the first, let's first leave it here. Want after creating the user to redirect on the home page, no, on the login page rather. And then this is if the response is okay. Now, if for instance the response is not okay, so you can see here we have else. Now, if the response status is 409, and this 409 specifically is coming from, if you check in our route here, this is coming from where we check this user. So if the user already exists here, we are sending back this status 409. So we are checking for this in a case a user already exists. We are checking for this status so that we can give the user the error that the user already exists, and we are checking it using this status code. And that's why we have this if and it is in the else. So in the else, we first take off this the loading spinner, then we tell the client, we first check if the response is equal 409. Now I actually I created an error manually. Okay, I'm just doing it in two ways. One, you can first give a toast.error and you say user with this email already exists. This is, you can use the toast.error. The same way we have toast.success, we have toast.error. Now I also created a state on top here for the email error. And not email, did I set it like email? Let's first see. Okay, so I have here this email, const email error, set email, and this one is supposed to be set email error. You can just change this, and I'm just going to copy it, set email error. So I'm setting here the email error of the user already exists. By default it's going to be empty. So when I get this 409, okay, if I get this 409, I will update it, set email error now to user. And you don't need to use both, you can use one of them, will work, but I wanted to show you how you can use in both cases, if you want to use the toast or if you want to set it and see it on the UI. So you set the email error, and after setting it, now we can actually display it on the email. So under the email, you see we have two errors. The first one is this from the errors.email required, so we can set that one. Down, I have another one, the small, which is actually rendering the email error. Okay, so that's how you can show that error. So when that error is there, we can capture it just like that. Else, we can just have this, the server, you can just say that something went wrong. Okay, and that's it. That's the logic. Let's now try creating a new user. I'm just going to create Andrew. Maybe it is just refreshing here, and let's go so on the console. So I'm just going to type here maybe this my name. I'm just going to choose here this email, this one, and let's put the password as password, as simple as that. And let's create on this. Let me just first clear here and click on sign up, and you can see creating. Please wait. And user created, they give me back the something here. Okay, they give me back the data. This is the data that we sent. The data is in this form, email, password. First of all, let's check on the console to see if the user was consoled. Here, just go on top here, scroll down. Just go scroll down, scroll down, scroll down. Okay, find unique, cannot read properties of an undefined, find unique, blah blah. Okay, so let's just go here. There is something we didn't do, so you just go back to the route. So this we have to import this DB. So db import it. Remember this, we had done this. I think we are importing it, I guess. Yeah, we are getting it from the libs. Okay, and let's check in the database first of all if this user was created. We can check here under user, and let's just see if a user was created with those credentials. It seems no user was created. Okay, if you refresh this, there is no any user. Okay, let's go back and try to understand what happened. So we are saying here user exists and await db.user.find unique, and we are passing where email, if user exists, blah blah, like that. Hashed password, everything looks really fine. Name, email, and password. Console.user. Okay, let me just try to merge this up and we see where we cannot where we have a problem. So it says here, type error, cannot read properties of undefined reading unique. I don't know. So did the email reach? Let's first console actually data. So this data we are getting up here. Okay, so before we do so many steps, so these ones we are sending these three: name, email, password. So what we can just do is consoling them, and I'm just going to first comment this out, comment this. So let me just comment out all these ones. Okay, and even this new user thing, they just comment this this one. Okay, and I'm just going for now to console the, we are consoling the user. Where is this user? Let me just create a user. Just say here const user is equal to, and just simply copy these things we have here, these ones. So I'm just going to have a user just like that. Okay, and then back here, let's just return this is user, and then here of course we can just simply return user for now. Okay, so I just test this. What I just want to see is if we are getting the email and password and the name, as simple as that. And you can just simply console.log them here just like this. Let's go ahead and do that. So just go back to the form. Let's put the same thing, this. Okay, just put any email here, and just write here maybe password, and you just click submit. Okay, and let's just check here. Okay, let's just check here and see. Okay, so we have this data being is reaching very well. We have the name, we have the email, and we have the password. So this is actually reaching. Okay, so now let's just put one thing at a time. So we have to check if the user exists. I'm just going to first comment this user exists db.find find unique. I don't know if there's any mistake in this, where email is email and if user exists. Okay, we can first actually just create. I can first leave this one commented, and let's first go ahead and hash the password, and let's try to create actually a user. So I'm just going to come here and then comment all this code up to this point. Just create a user just like that, new user. And let me just go ahead and first remove this we have just created. console.log new user, and then here we can just say user is equal new user, just like that. Okay, so just now check if we are able to create a user, just as simple as that. So let's go and create this, the same details, and here I'm just going to give this email and you see password. Okay, just see password. Okay, and create. Okay, so created. Okay, and the first thing we have here, let's just scroll down. Okay, so they are saying type error, cannot read properties of undefined reading create. Okay, so this create, they are like, it seems they are not seeing the create method, user.create. Okay, the DB seems to be not reading this user.create. What could be the problem? Okay, let me try to understand. Cannot read properties of undefined. The same thing here. The data is reaching, but now the problem is let's just check our model again. The models we have in the schema, we have the user, I guess. We have model user, and that's why we're able to use the user, text name, email, invoices, password, and all that kind of stuff. I'm not sure why, and in our database we again also have the same thing in the database. I don't know why it is misbehaving like that. Okay, let me just try again, but it's trying to say undefined. Let me first try to remove this. Where is the route? Okay, so let me just remove this TB. Okay, and maybe I don't know if let me just try to get this DB again imported from the libs, and I guess that's how it was imported. I don't know why it is not creating. Await user, await db dot user dot create. Let me first look at the invoice, and if the same thing we are doing, so we have const invoice db dot invoice dot create, and then we pass in the object. Yeah, I think it should be okay. And just go back to this user. We have await db dot user dot create, and then it is saying undefined. Really, there I'm not getting it. Let me just try again. Let's just try again here. This time I'm just going to use fake filler, and the here, and you can see it takes like really, it is really so fast. I don't know why it is so fast to create. This is the one we have just sent right now, this one, and let me see if we're having the same problem. type here cannot read properties or undefined reading create. Okay, so let me just first figure out this. Okay, so I've seen what the problem is. So the problem is when it has nothing to do with our code up here. This problem is the Prisma client problem. So you can see here we have this DB from our libs, and this one is the one which generates the Prisma client all the time. Now, the one thing that after you have changed your schema, okay, when you change anything in your schema, guys, this is very important. You can spend the whole day dancing with this problem. So the thing is, whenever you change anything within your schema, one thing you have to remember is that the Prisma client has already stored what you have previously in your schema and is not seeing the new changes. Okay, so to update the new changes in your application, when you change anything in your schema, the first thing you should do is shut down all the processes, stop the server. That is one thing. Stop the server. Okay, stop the server from running. In fact, all of them, even if you are running Prisma Studio, all of them, shut them down, and after run npx Prisma npx Prisma generate. So this command is for generating a new Prisma client. So when you generate a new one, it's going to take now into consideration the new schema. So run this, and this one generates the new Prisma client that is going to be able to run in your system. Okay, it should just show you like this. It should show you Prisma generated, Prisma client, and this should look like this. Now if I run back the system, npm run dev. Okay, so that was the problem. Please take care of that, and I always leave these problems in the video so that you can see how I hustle to really get them. So let's just go back, refresh the page. Okay, let's go back and refresh the page. Now the Prisma client is having our models, is having everything that is up to date. Okay, so now let's go and create a user. Just going to go ahead, fake fill, create user, just like that. So you can see now it is taking more time. User created. Let's go on this. Now you can see this user is being consoled here. If I show you, you can see here user of ID2, name, and then the password. You can see the password has also been hashed. If we check in the database, we must be having two users. The one I created when I was just like trying to fix it, and this one we have just created right now. Okay, so that is good. So we have the user being created. Let's now put this and comment this code back, and these kind of things they make you actually learn. It's not until you are doing the actual project like this one you get to know what actually happens. Okay, so I'm just gonna comment this while we are doing this check. Now I'm just going to assimilate, create a new user. So let me just say test. I'm just going to create here test, and maybe test, and just put let me just call this one mokjb, and then here email. I'm just going to use the test at Gmail, and then password is going to be password. Okay, we'll be using this. So sign up. So this one creates a new user. If we just go to the database, it should show us a third user. You can see here test at Gmail, And by the way, if you're having difficulties whatever this, what I noticed also is this Supabase, you need a really nice internet. If you're having issues, like you are getting issues database, like please check your database. If you see something to do with that, it means your database, you have slow internet. Just please check your internet. Okay, you can see the user was created. Now let's try to create the same user. So you see here the user was created. Okay, by the way, you can see the timestamps that are being created there. So let's just go and try to create this actual user that we have already created, this one, having the same email, test@gmail.com. So want to see if this is working. The user exists. If user exists, it should send us back this status, and then on our register form we are checking for this status. You can see the status is being checked here. If it is checked, then we set the email error to user with this email that exists, and also give a toast, and then we will get this error and we display it on the UI here on the email. Okay, that's what we want. So I'm just going to go and demonstrate that. So just come here, let's just create a new user, Andrew, with the test@gmail, password, any password, 1234566. Let's create. So sign up. Okay, so you can see here user with this email that exists, and we also have here on the UI user with this email already exists. So this is really great, and I've shown you how to get that. Okay, I've shown you how you can capture the error and how you can display it onto the UI. Okay, so now since we have created the registration is working properly, let's work on the login. So the first thing with the login, let's put the form, and really it is the same form, the same logic. I'm just going to put the form and I pass you through the logic. So the first thing is create the login page. So we already have the login page. So copy this and let's put in the login page. Where is the login? So we have the login page here, and let me make sure I'm recording. Okay, so now just update the login page. I'm just going to update it like this, and really is the same thing, is having this component login, and then is having this the link with this logo to the logo, and then down here we have this login component. So let me just call this, create this login form. I'm just going to come here to components. So in the components, create a new component. So just create a new file, login form.jsx, and let's get the code for that from here. So if you scroll down, you're going to see the login component. Just let's grab this code. We concentrate more on the logic than on that. Okay, so on this login we have a lot to discuss here. Okay, and by the way, after this we should redirect after the register. Let's not forget, after the user has registered, we should direct him to the login page. Okay, let's just do that. We should not forget. So here, when the response is okay and you have reset everything, you first create the router. So const router is equal use router, and this use router is from router navigation. Okay, make sure it is from router navigation, and then on this router we can just say router dot. So down here, just say router dot push. Okay, and then we are pushing a person to go on the login page. So here, go to the login. So when someone, after he has created an account, it sends them to the login page. Okay, so let's go on the login page. Let's put this code in the component. I guess we have already done that. So in the login form component, if I go to the login, let's go to this login here. Okay, so the login form is there. Okay, so you can see the login form is really looking nice. Okay, so we also put a few things. We are using React hook form in the login. We are in the login. We have the React hook form here. I've already explained that. We have the loading spinner also, and then we have this on submit function, which is actually giving the data. And you can see here we are not having much things. I'm just consoling the data. And if you just go to this, the inputs I'm registering them. I have the email, register it, and I'm also putting required to true. And then down here I'm rendering the error if it is there. This field is required. The same thing to the password. Okay, so if I just right now put in some data here, let me just feed in any details here and click here. You see the data is in here, the email and the password. Okay, so now what we want is to get this working with the we have to use NextAuth to make sure that the registered user, he can sign in. We have to use NextAuth. And by the way, if there is one thing that is really somehow hard, I think in Next.js is implementing NextAuth, because the documentation of NextAuth and Next.js 13 is not that really good, is not so much straightforward on what to use. Okay, it is always a hassle, but I'm just going to try my level best to make you understand it. And it starts on actually the sign-in form. If you're using credentials, if you're using email password, this is the point where the NextAuth starts from. It starts from when you want to log in the user, because they're the ones who can have the session where you can store these things. Okay, so let's move in step by step and see. And I've put most of these things in this guide. Okay, you just use this. And I wish I could have tutorials whereby someone can create for me these kind of things, because you can refer them all the time. You can refer them all the time. Instead of going back to the code, you can refer to this documentation. So now let's go down here. You can see the first thing you're going to do is installing NextAuth, and you can go to nextauth.org here and click on get started. Okay, click on get started, and the first thing you're going to see, it is npm install NextAuth. So get it here, and down here I'm just going to install NextAuth, just like that. Npm install NextAuth. Okay, so yes, move on. So the next thing is, if you just look here after you have installed the NextAuth, you see that you have to actually just create an endpoint. Okay, so you have to create an endpoint, and the endpoint, it has to be of this format. And they tell you here, add the API route. So they say to add the Next.js to your project. So they tell you what to add, and then they're saying if you're using Next.js 13.2 or above, you have to use with the new app router, you are supposed to use this guide. So if you click on this guide, it opens here. Okay, and the only thing they tell you is to do is you can initialize Next.js NextAuth with a route handler 2, very similar to the API routes, and the only thing you have to do is create this. You have to create app. In the app you have API, then in the API you have auth, then you have this route with this syntax dot next auth, then route.ts or js. So I'm just going to copy this from auth. So copy auth up to here on ts, just copy this, and let's go to our app. Okay, so here in the app, then API. So inside the API, just create a new file and paste all this, and then change ts to js and enter. So this one is going to create the auth folder. Then inside the auth, it creates this other folder, and then inside this folder we have the route. Okay, so after creating this, just copy this code and paste it there. Okay, just copy this code, all of it, paste it there, just like this. Okay, so inside here we have NextAuth, and here we are initiating next auth, and all the options that we're supposed to put, we put them inside here. Okay, so here we're supposed to put auth options. Okay, so before we put the auth options, let's create the auth options. We are going to be passing into this one. Now this is an object indicating how giving the details of which next auth are you going to use, which provider. So all the settings, you set them inside an object inside next auth. Normally what we normally do is create in your libs folder. So go to libs and let's create a new file called NextAuth options. So you can just say auth options.js. Okay, and this one's supposed to be an object. So const auth auth options is equal to, this is supposed to be equal to an object, and then of course down you're supposed to export it. So export auth options, just like this. So you should have these two statements first, create it and then export it, and then inside the this API we have just created this one. Then inside here just put auth options, just import them from the libs auth options, so bring them inside here. So this is the first setup, and after creating the handler, then you export it as either a get or as a post. This one is really the syntax, and have this one done. Okay, so after having this setup done, now we can start adding some things. The first one, we add the host provider. So you can see here in this one I showed you how to create. You create in the libs folder the options, and then you put these two options. Okay, so just next one is add credentials provider in the object, and also change the login page. So the first thing is going to add the provider. So go back to the documentation and scroll down to where there are providers. So just go to providers, and they have a lot of providers, so many providers they have. The only one we want at this point is the credentials. After Coinbase we have credentials, then the Discord. So click on credentials, and then on the credentials scroll down to this one, and copy this provider. The first thing is import this credentials on top. So what you can just do is getting this providers array. So just copy this providers array. Just copy this array of providers, copy, and go back to the options, and then inside the options the first thing we are putting are these the providers. Okay, so then we have to import this credentials provider. Yeah, there are no suggestions, but we can just grab it from here. Just copy this line on top here, import credentials provider, this one, copy. Okay, just go and put it on top here. So you can just put this here on top, import credentials provider from NextAuth providers credentials. Okay, and that's why you're using it here. Now I'm just going to go ahead and remove all these comments. Okay, all these comments. Okay, just go ahead and let me just remove this, like minimize it like that. Let me just go all these, you can read them. I'm just going to remove all these ones. Okay, just like that. So the name is credentials, and now the credentials you can see here is they have. So by default this by default this NextAuth, they create for you a login form. Remember, we created our own login form, but by default these people, they create for you the login form. Okay, and you can see the credentials they used here, for instance, is username and the password. Okay, And if you want to see where it is, okay, if you want to see where it is, just go to, so after putting the credentials just like this, you can go now to the browser, okay, and instead just put here auth. So you can just say they have theirs on API auth, then stroke sign in. Just put this one, API auth sign in. This one is going to load their default sign in page. So you can see they have this default sign in form. Okay, I find this one really crooked. That's why we build ours, and does not come with like branding and all kind of stuff. But they have, by default, they have this sign in page. Okay, and you can even modify it from here. Here they have given a username. You can just say email, and then you say label email. Okay, and then type email, placeholder jsmith at maybe at gmail.com, gmail, and let's see if this one changes. So you can just refresh this, and you can see now it changes to email and password. Okay, but we don't want to use theirs. We want to use ours that we have designed, the login page that we have designed. We don't want to use this one, the default one. So to remove the default one, go back to this, to their stuff here, and search for, so you can search for the pages. Okay, search for pages just like this, or if you see it somewhere pages, you can click on it. Okay, and better you can, I think you can look on it somewhere on the sidebar. If you can see it on the sides, you can click on it. If you can't see it, just simply search it here, pages. Okay, just like this. And let's see, pages. So just click on pages and let's see what you can get. Okay, so we have the pages here. So they say NextAuth automatically creates simple and unbranded authentication pages for handling the sign in, sign out, email verification, and displaying error messages. So if you want to put yours, you can see in your options, you simply add these pages. Okay, and these are default pages. So you can see, just come here on the credentials on top before here, just add these pages. What did I add? Just put comma. Okay, so you have this, and I want to remove. So you can see by default they have auth sign in, and this is the one we just visited by default. Then they have the one of sign out, they have the error, they have the verify, they have even the new user. Okay, so you can remove all other pages. You can remove all these other pages and leave the one we want to customize. So we want to put ours, which is login. So remove all these ones and put login. Okay, so now if I go back to the page here, this API auth sign in, and I refresh, or I try to go there, you see that it now redirects to ours that we created. Okay, so that is good. So let's continue adding more details. Okay, you can just continue following this. So you can see we have added the providers, and also we have changed the login page. So another thing is the Prisma adapter. Okay, so you have to add the Prisma adapter. Now just go to here. Since we are using Prisma to connect our database, they need to know that which provider are using database direct, or you're using an ORM. So just come here and also search for adapter, or you could just minimize the providers, and then you see down here adapters. So click on adapters, and then on adapters, let's look for the one we're using, which is Prisma. So click on Prisma, and then down here you can now see that the first thing you have to do is installing. Now we already have Prisma client installed. We also have the Prisma installed itself. So the only thing we need to install is actually the Auth Prisma adapter. That is the only thing we have to install. So I'm just going to copy this Auth Prisma. So just come to this terminal and just say npm install, and we are installing at Prisma adapter. Just install like that. So while it is installing, let's move around and see how we can set up this. So the only thing you just need to just get is you have to add in this adapter here, and then you have to pass in also the instance of Prisma, which is for our case is db. So we have this, and then also we have the adapter. So just copy this line, only this line, we don't want the provider, just copy the adapter. So just on top here before the pages, you can add this adapter. Now we have to import the Prisma adapter, and then instead of Prisma here, we pass in the db, because this is our Prisma instance. If you look at what they passed in Prisma, and Prisma is new Prisma client. So this is the instance, which is our db, and then let's get this Prisma adapter, which is import Prisma adapter here. Just grab that, bring it inside up here. So you can just put it down here, Prisma adapter, and so you have just specified the adapter. So moving on, another thing that you want to set up is, so after setting up the adapter, you have installed it, you have added the adapter here. You can see we have this and we have it also adapter here on top. We have also put our pages, so everything now seems to be fine. Okay, so another thing is to modify the env file, and we have to add these two things, the next URL and next secret. Now if you check in the documentation, let me minimize now these ones. If you go to, I think there is where they have I don't know if it's under configurations really, and then is where we have like options. I think there's options or Next.js. Let me see. Yes. So under options, you can see here you have to set environmental variables. So they tell you that next URL, I think we have jumped. So they just tell you that you have to put this these two. So they have to put this next auth and the next secret. Okay. So just put those two things in your environmental variables. So these two, I'm just going to copy them from here. So add them to your env file, .env file. Okay. And today we just want also, if it is possible, we deploy our project. So inside the env, you can just go ahead, and I'm just going to remove all these things by Prisma, so that all my stuff are together in one place. So down here under resend key, I'm just going to add these two. So you have the next auth URL. This one is the URL for your application. Okay, and then you also have next auth secret. Now this can be anything. For instance, can be subscribe, can be anything. Okay, whatever you put here doesn't matter. So, but you should just define the secret. So after defining the secret, you have to go and actually add it to your, also there in your options. Okay, so we are going to add the secret and the strategy. So by the way, by default, these ones, even if you don't put them, they are optional, but I always put them, these two. So they, by default, the secret, this one, if you define it in the environmental variables, it will not matter. If you just go and read about it, a second, I'm just going to go to secret, and they say a random string is used to hash tokens, sign in, encrypt, blah blah. If you set next auth secret as an environmental variable, you don't have to define this option. So if you have put this in your environmental variable, they said you don't have actually to define it as an option here, but I put it anyway. Then the session also by default the strategy is JWT. Okay, the session here, and they say the default value for this option are shown below. So they by default, actually by default I'm seeing strategy is database, which should be, I think, JWT. Okay, so just put session, and then under strategy put JWT, so that we can use JSON Web Tokens. Okay, and I think we are about to get done with the settings. Okay, now you could add these callbacks, but we are not actually modifying any user details. We might not use this, maybe in our next project. Okay, so now after you have added those ones, is now the really thing is in this function called authorize. Okay, so if you move down to the credentials provider, inside you see we have put this, by the way. You make sure that you are using the email and password as you have on your login. If your login is having username, then use username here. Okay, the label is this, and then the type is email, placeholder is this one. This one doesn't matter, the placeholder. Then the password, then you have the password, and then this. Okay, then inside here we have this authorize function. This is where all the logic of the login goes. So these credentials are actually the login, the email and password. We can remove this request. We are not going to make requests from here. Like for instance, creating a user on a thing, we're not going to create any requests from here. So remove these default things that they have just put. Just going to remove all these ones so that we have an empty, clean slate. So here we have to do three actually checks. The first check is we have to check if the credentials, okay, are not empty. So that is the first check. Okay, we have to make sure that the credentials that have been given, they are not empty. The second one is we have to check the if the user that you have been given exists. So you have to check if user that is trying to sign in already have an account. So if user exists in the database, so does this user exist of that email, the credential.email. Okay, then the third one we have to check for is we have to check the password. Okay, so if he has passed, now the user exists, how about the password? Is the password is it the one we have? So these are the three checks that we have to do, and I'm just going to get these ones and I explain them. Okay, I'm just going to come here and then copy this. So inside here we have these three checks. Okay, and let me explain one by one. So the first one, we check if the user credentials are correct. Whatever they have put in, they are not empty. Actually here, they are not empty. User credentials are not empty. So the credentials are actually the ones we pass in when you are creating like login, are the actual ones that we pass in. So we say credentials are the ones which are having. So the credentials is an object, and this object is containing the email and the password. And so here we say if the credentials.email does not exist, or email credentials.password does not exist, we want to return null. And you could even just go here and console.log like no inputs. So this is just like a backend check. So this one we just do like a backend check, but we know very well on the client we already have this one sorted. we can't have a user submitting empty fields. But still, even when we are doing the check on the front side, on the front end, you have to confirm on the back end. Okay. Then a second check is check if the user exists, and here we have the a user db.user.find unique, and here we are using the db, so we have to bring this one in, get the db. Okay, and is since we're in the same folder libs, it is here. Okay, so we want to check the user, and we want to check is this user of this email there. Okay, so we check where email is equal credentials.email. Okay, then we move on. If this user does not exist, then we have to return. You can just also console.log here, no user found. Okay, no user found. Okay, then if he passes that check, now we can do the check of the password. So we can check if the password is correct. Okay, so if the password is correct, we say password match. So we get the password, we match it, and this is why we use the compare function, as I said before. So it is password match is await compare, and you have to get this compare from the bcrypt. So get this from bcrypt on top here, compare from bcrypt. Okay, and then we have to compare here the credentials. So we compare the email, the password that someone has just put in, plus the one that is on the database. And since we already have the existing user from the database, that's why we are saying credentials.password. This is the incoming password, and we compare it with the existing password in the database. If the password are not correct, we want to return nothing. You can just say here, maybe wrong password, and these ones are just for you to check if things are working. And then down here, now we can just actually create a user. I could just say const user is equal to, so you can just create a user like this. That the user, we just get the ID, name, and email, and we get them from the existing user, all of them. Okay, and then at the end of the day, we have to return this user. Okay, you can return this user. Now if you wanted to add other things on the user, that's when you can use the callbacks, but since we are not doing this one, we automatically put this in session. Okay, it will automatically put these details, the ones you return here, it is going to find and modify the session with these details. Okay, so when that one is done, okay, we have now to update, we have to go ahead and update the onSubmit function of the login form, so that now we can actually submit the details. So these ones we are receiving here, okay, we have these ones, they come from the login form. So we have now actually go and update those ones. Okay, and then we use, if you check in this login form, what is it we have in here, login data, we just use this the sign in function from the React auth or the React auth. This sign in function, it takes in the credentials, the name of the package you're using, and then this one. So just go and do this. I can just grab it from here. Okay, so just go to the login form, and on the login form, which is this, we have our data here. Now next is actually sending this data, okay, sending this data to the NextAuth. So whatever we send from the login goes to this route of NextAuth, the one we have just created. Now the first thing, it returns back the login data. So you can say login data is equal wait and sign in. Now this sign in function is under events. If you go to options, and you can see down here, you will see somewhere events, and on the events there is sign in function. Okay, they say sent on successful sign in, blah 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 blah. Now I'm just going to first import this function. You can click like this, and if they don't suggest where to import it, we have to import this from let me see. If I put the import, it's supposed to come from React. So the sign in, import sign in from NextAuth React. Okay, just go on top here and let's import it just here. Import sign in from NextAuth React. Okay, and this sign in function, it takes in two things. It takes in the credentials. So here is where you can specify the Google, the GitHub. You can specify which provider you're using. In this one, we're using credentials, and then we specify the data. Now we put the data, and this data I'm just spreading it from here. You see here, I have this data, so I'm just spreading all of it there. Okay, and then redirect false. It shouldn't just redirect anywhere, like to try to redirect the new user or something. So don't redirect. And then if the login data is available, we can set this to false, and that means that we can set loading to true here at first. When it does this, then we can just check. So for the first, we don't want to push to this. Let's first remain here and see what happens. So let's try to log in a user. Okay, I'm just going to come here, refresh. Okay, so we have our user. Okay, we have our user who had, I think it was test@gmail with a password of password, just like that. Click. Now this one's supposed to be not sign up but login. Let me just go and change that name. So the button is supposed to be login here, login or sign in. Okay, so let's just go ahead and click on this. Let's just wait it to update. Let's try to log in. Okay, and click on login, and you can see signing you in. Please wait. Okay, so you can see it has given us back the details, and however much does not cleared anything, but it seems like we are successfully logging in, and we can know that going back to the Auth options, and at last where we are having this user, can we console.log the user? So here, before the returning the user, let me console.log user. Let me just console.log user, just like this. And if you also check in the not console, if you just go and click on this and click on application, and then you look at cookies, you see we have some we have here the session. So this is the session. I can delete this session, and we do it again. Let's try to log in again with this person, and this time I'm just going to check on the console to see the details. Okay, so let's say click login and signing you in, and you see here they're being created. Put in the session, and if we check down here in the console, we should have the user. Okay, we should have the user. Yes, so you can see the ID3, a name, and then the email. So we are good. Okay, so this is good. So now this data, after you have created, it is automatically put in the session. Okay, this data is put into the session after you have created it. So what we just want to do is, how do we get the session? First of all, let's finish working with this one. It should clear the details and to take us to the create invoice page. Okay, so going back to our login form, let's just go to this login form. Okay, so inside here, where So here let's put again this router. Okay, and we can also have the toast. Okay, so here we can have the toast. So you can say toast, okay, dot success. Maybe you can say login successful. Login successful. Okay, so just put login successful. What else do you want to do? So someone does this, and we can also reset the details. So I'm just going to call the reset method. So just call also the reset, so that the fields can be reset. So we have all these, we are chaining all these methods so that everything looks fine. Okay, so now after doing this, let's test again once again. Just click login, signing you in, please wait. So login successful, and and it is not redirecting. Did I put the okay? So finally it has redirected to this new invoice. Okay, that is great. So now the only thing we want is it has redirected at this point. So we want to check the session. Okay, want to check the session and get the details of the user. We update them in this header here first of all. So want to get the those things we have here in the session, the name, the email. Want to show the user that we know that he has logged in, and we can show him those details. Okay, so that is great. So continuing here, let's see what next. Okay, and you can see we can update the header. But before we actually update the header, we have actually to create a provider. So there's one step I didn't add here, which is before you create the header, before you update the header, you must create. So let me just put here for you guys. So after this, okay, I'm just going to put here some heading. So here you have to create the session. Okay, create the session provider. Okay, just create the session provider. So just come here to just go back to this, and let's search for use session. So say use session, and I think not only, I say just see here, if not, I think just here make sure the session, we need this session provider. Click on this session provider. We have to create a context and put this this session here. So first you have to go and let's create here something like provider or host provider. So whatever you want to create it, you can create it as a component, you can put under context. So let me create another folder, and can be outside here. I'm just going to create a new folder. I'm just going to call it context. Okay, and inside here I'm just going to put auth provider .js, and you can just come here and you say RFC. Okay, so this is going to be export default function host provider one. It should take in children. Okay, and I think session also, and then inside here it should now render this. So you can see this, it takes in the props, it also takes in the session. So just come and put this. Okay, let's just say return here. It is going to return the session provider, and you should import this session provider. So this session provider should come from NextAuth React, and you pass in the session and then inside here we pass in the children. Okay, just like this. Just pass in here the children. Okay, so we have the children and the session, and I think we should be good to go now. So this is how you create the session. Why I'm putting this, because it has to be use client. So wherever you put this, it has to be use client, and that's why we are not putting it directly in the layout. If we do it, we make the layout use client, okay, which is not good. So we have to create this host provider, and then we can wrap this host provider into the layout. So just go to the layout, go to layout here. Okay, just go to the layout, and then onto the layout, just below the toaster here, on top of toaster, just put here auth provider, host provider from the context. Just grab this here, cut it, and then take it to after the footer, just like this. So this one, they should all be inside the host provider. Make sure everything you're having is inside the host provider, and this one will expose the session. So to see the session, we can see the session by using the use session hook. Okay, so we can use the use session hook, okay, here, and this is for the client side. There is also server side, and why I'm not going to use server side is just because in most of our pages we are having client side. Okay, so here I'm just going to, first of all, you have to use get this use session. Okay, so you can just come and do this. Okay, you get this here, and let's copy actually the header. So after I've created the session provider, let me just update here, put this for you guys. Just copy this, and let's put it here. So you have to create a context. So you create the context folder, and then create the host provider. Okay, host provider .js, and then inside is where you can actually put this code. Okay, and of course after that, then you can use and after import this, you can just put maybe as another step down here. Just add this here, and then just say just import host provider in the layout. Okay, so just put this in the layout. Let's just go in the, we added this in the layout, so you can just update your layout to this one. And then after that is where we can actually just update the header. So I'm just going to copy this and update it on the header. So we already have the navbar, so just go to components and navbar, and I can just update this here. And what have I updated exactly? So the first thing is, in this we can have access to use session. So use session hook, as you can see it here, where is it? Use session. So let me just explain it from here, where the code is very minimal. So this use session hook gives us access to the data that is present in the session. You can see we get the data and we rename it as session. So this one is the one which is having the user. So inside the session, we can access a user. And then it also gives us the status. Now the status, they are always three. If you read the status, the first status is authenticated. These are the people who are logged in and they're authenticated. The second one is unauthenticated, if someone is not logged in. And the third one is loading, while they are still figuring out if someone is authenticated. And they talk about these ones. For instance, they talk about the data. They said this can be three values: the session, undefined, and null. Okay, when the session hasn't been fetched yet, data will be undefined. In case it failed to retrieve the session, it will be null, and in case the success, data will be the session. And if you see here the status, they're saying this one has possible three states: the loading, authenticated, and unauthenticated. And we can use these ones to display different states. This one really gives you the ability to put different states. And you can also just go in details and look at the session. I think I'm not going to go into that, but you have to use it in this way. So we can get the data here and we get this state. So the first thing on top here, I brought in the session data session. I have here use session like this, and then of course I'm even consoling the session here. Now this session here has an object inside of the user, and this object here is when you're going to be using to update the UI. Okay, now on to that, I start with the first status. If the status is loading, we want to show this loading component, and the loading component, I have it into this loading.js, this one. This is the loading we made in our app. So I'm loading this component of loading while the app is loading. Let's go back to the navbar. So if the status is loading, I'm putting a loader here, then continue. Now if the status, so we are going to look at this function in a second, okay, but I'm still using that status down here where we have these the user. Okay, I think it is in top here. Okay, so you can just, you see I'm having two things here. Let me just minimize here so that you can understand very well. So I'm saying if the status is authenticated, okay, if someone has logged in, if this is true, I want to show some parts. I want to show this an avatar here. Okay, like instead here, and you can see it has already updated, and because the person is actually logged in, let me just try to increase this so that you can see it very well. So you can see I'm trying to show this part here. If someone is logged in, I'm trying to display their details and the logout button. Okay, and this is the part here. If someone is authenticated, I want you to show their name, the initials. So you can see I have the initials, and also show their session.user. We said inside the session is where the user is found. So inside the session, we get user.name. Okay, that is why we are getting that. And then, of course, their email. And these are the two things. And then, of course, down here, we have the logout button. Okay, this is the logout button here. And that's why we have these two buttons, two things. We have the user details, who is logged in. You can actually just show only this. I wanted to show you how you can get all the details. You can not necessarily show them all the details, but you can just get them like this. And then you have the logout. Now, the logout functionality, it also just comes with the events. So if you go back to the events, let me just reduce. You see, we have also on the event, we have sign out. Okay, so they tell you sent when the user signs out. So there is also this sign out function. And what I was telling you that the documentation is not straightforward. They don't give examples of how to use them. You know, it is a hassle to find out from the documentation. That's why I did those things. You can find them in this documentation. You can always use it in your future projects so that you can do this faster. Okay, so we have this a person authenticated. Now, if you click on logout, what happens? So on the logout, there is another function, as we said, from NextAuth, which is sign out. So they have a sign out function. Okay, they have a sign out function, and you can see, you just come here on a click. So this is a sign out button. On a click, now we actually call this function sign out function. And if I click sign out, this person is logged in right now. If I click logout, so it is in the loading state. Okay, it is in the loading state, and it logs out and shows the login and register back. Okay, now let me show you one function that is generating the initials. Let us log in again, and we are using the test. So the email is test, password is password. Okay, login, and they are signing us in. Okay, they redirect us this place like this. So you have this person details. So how am I generating? As you can see, MookJB, I'm generating the initials of MJ. So I created a small function for generating the initials. Okay, so I have this function here called function jGetInitials, and it takes in a full name. So you pass in a full name, and it is going to generate for you the. So the first thing is it splits the words, this full name. It will first split it using the space, because you type in something like this. Okay, so we are splitting this into an array using the split method, and we split using this space which you are leaving here. Okay, so after splitting, we have now this one as an array. So this one returns an array of 2 words. Now we say let the initials be empty. We don't know the initials. Now we just do a for loop. Okay, we just simply do a simple for loop, and we say for let I equal 0 for I words dot length, and then we say I plus plus plus, and here we get the initials, and then we just get words at I. For instance, if I is equal 0, this will be 0 at 0. We get the first initial in this array. Okay, because this array is having now something like words. Okay, is having like words is equal to an array, and this array is having like the first one like M, maybe this this is having something like this, and then here is having something like this. So it's having these 2 items. That's why when we loop, so this words at I, this gets like this, and then we get the first letter, this M. Okay, and then we do the same thing. If I is equal now to 1, it also gets, and whatever it gets, it concatenates it onto the initials. Then afterwards, we have the initials is equal to initials dot uppercase. Now we are putting them in a capital letter if that is necessary. If you don't want, you can leave them in small letter. Okay, so that is the function which at the end of them we want the initials to return the initials. Now if I just say const initials is get initials, and is getting the name from the session, session.user.name. Now by default, if you don't put this one, it will throw an error, because when someone logs out, this function will not be having anything. So it will bring an error, and that's why I put this double question mark. And this one means you are setting a default value. So the default value is this, which will never show up, because this one can only work when you have logged out, and then we are not showing the other part. Okay, so that's why I'm having them now to come, and I display my initials here. Okay, that is great. And so that is this part here. So we have this. Now the second thing we have to do is protecting this page here. So if I log out, okay, I'm just going to log out. Okay, okay, so you see I'm logging out, but I'm still have access to this invoice new. So a person who is not registered, he should not be able to create an invoice. Okay, the person who he should not see this page if he's not logged in. He should see a page telling him if you want to create an invoice, please log in or sign up to be able to create what? To create an invoice. So how do we do that? Okay, so now if you want, you can also actually get the update here. So if you scroll down, I've explained this one. Now we can protect the invoice page. We are here. Now I'm just going to copy all this one, but basically what we want from this one, I'm just going to show you. Okay, I'm just going to come and just going to copy a small thing here. This one only for the unauthenticated. So I'm just going to come to the invoice. So the invoice page is on new, invoice and new, and inside here the first thing you have to get is the use session. So on top of these things, all of them here, let me just get the use session. So it is const, and you just get data and rename this as session, and then you have also status, and then you are getting this from use. You are getting this from use session, and this one is from NextAuth React. Okay, just like this. So this one gives us access now to the session and the status. Okay, so move down before we reach on this. Sorry for that. So before we reach here on after this handle print, so here I'm just going to remove this console. Just going to put these two things here. The first thing we want to do is, if the status is loading, I want to show the loader, and you can always get this one from the app loading. Okay, and then if status is unauthenticated, this means this person is not registered or is not logged in. We just want them to show them a page where they say, please log in to be able to create your first invoice. Okay, or not even first invoice, to be able to create your invoice or to create an invoice. So you say to create an invoice, my English, to create an invoice, please log in to be able to create an invoice, just like this. And then I'm just showing also the login page. I'm giving them the link where they can log in or register. Okay, so you see, so this person right now is not authorized. Okay, so we can reload this page and we see if it is going to show us that we should be able to first log in for us to be able to see that. Let's see. It is loading, and theme link. Let's get this theme link. Import this. Remember we did this in our first episode. So get the theme link. Okay, so let's see. Okay, it is loading. Okay, so look at that, guys. Please log in to be able to create an invoice. Okay, so you can see now someone who is not logged in cannot create an invoice. Okay, so this person cannot create an invoice. So if he logs in, okay, let's log in with our test. Okay, let's try to log in, see if we can see the page. So it is like password. Try to log in. Okay, so you can see now we are able to see the page. Okay, so it logs us and send us to this page. We have all our details and we're able to create the page. Okay, so the authentication and protecting our page has been successfully done, guys. That is a great move, and that is so great. The first thing we have to do is to make sure we have access to the ID of this person, because if you remember, or now creating an invoice, things change. if we are going to create an invoice, we must get the ID of this individual. We send it to the database so that we know the invoices that belong to this person. Okay, we have to grab the ID of this person. That means, can we first get the ID? And we can get this ID from the session. Okay, so you can just come here and you say in here where we have this handle something, handle submit. Where do we have some handle submit? Create invoice, created invoice. Okay, so here where we send the data, so you can see we send this, and then we send the invoice data as form data, and then we put also this one. So right now we have to add, if you remember, onto this one. Let me make you remember when we made our invoice in the API invoice route. So in the route for the creating, you see we added this user ID. So and then we are saying this user ID is going to be on the invoice data. So you have to create this key user ID. So just go back to this new, and then here they just add one more key. Just say comma user ID, and then user ID we can get this one from session. So you can just say session if it exists. If the session is there, then dot user. Okay, and then dot, if the user so is there, then we can also get the ID. Okay, so we have this user ID. We get it from here and we can add it. Or if you wanted, you could first say const user ID. After getting it here, we can just do here. You could just say const user ID instead of putting all of it here. You could just first define it up here if you wanted. Okay, where is here on the try, where we are having here on this data here, you could just say const, okay, user ID is equal to this. Okay, you could first get this. After getting the user ID, now you can just come and bring it. So whatever you just want is the same thing. Okay, just put the user ID there. So we must send the user ID. So after sending the user ID, now everything should now work properly. Now on fetching, okay, so on fetching, let's first be able to create the invoice. We haven't created the invoice. We don't know if everything is going to work. Okay, so the ID we are using is ID3. Okay, is ID3. So I'm just going to go to create an invoice. Let me add some fake data, add the logo. Okay, I'm just adding the logo here. Okay, just scroll down to the logo, and let's just use this one. Okay, done. Let me change this name to engineering works. Engineering works. Okay, and then down here, build to, let's just say to water consultants. Okay, and let's just go and you could change the date. I'm not going to change anything. Let me just change here. Just say water pumps and say 1, each at 1,000. Let's create another item which is going to be engine. Okay, maybe 1 at 3,000, and then here it says 0, and also tax here you can make it 0. Okay, and let's try to create this. I'm not sure if we get how many errors by just create. So creating invoice, let's pray everything goes in where. Okay, invoice created, guys, and I have everything. Wow, this is really great, guys. I have the invoice. All figures are created very well here. Everything looks okay. I can go ahead and print. Okay, I can go ahead and I print this. Okay, this is great. And okay, so let's just go and check on the invoices. If now on the fetching, I know there must be a problem fetching the invoices. Let's go and check. Here on the invoice. How is it fetching? Is it fetching that one? Probably I expect an error or something. Okay, so we don't have it automatically by just checking the database. And I'm just going to check under invoice. Okay, just need to see if the invoice was created. Okay, just checking the database. Okay, you could also just use Prisma Studio. Okay, you could just use also Prisma Studio and check. Okay, it is taking more time, but they just wait. Just take our time and just wait. Okay, and you also just check on the console. I don't know if we had to consult the invoice. We should just be like consulting like the invoice. Seeing here undefined, a lot of undefined. I'm not sure. Okay, and the invoice is here actually, guys. I can see the object for the invoice, including even the items were created. Okay, so this looks great. Though I'm saying user ID to not a number. Okay, I'm seeing something like not a number, something like that. User is also missing. Okay, so we have those ones. I guess there's no a invoice. Let's just run actually also the Prisma. I'm just going to put Prisma Studio here. It seems the database sometimes it can delay. npx Prisma Studio. Okay, so we have the Prisma Studio. And just start the studio. Meanwhile, let's also just check this side. And it did not create, guys. The first thing, if you look at it, let's just go back to this. And let's look at the errors that we have so that we can sort them. At first, you can see here, there is this engineering works. I don't know this console is now for which line, but I see here I have this the invoice. Okay, items, I even have the items inside. Then now on create, they have Prisma create invoice. First of all, the user ID they are saying is not a number. Okay, that is the first thing, and I think that was the problem. The logo is there, and then it has this user. I don't know what you're supposed to put in the user. Okay, when you're just creating here the data, I'm seeing they're saying user is missing. Okay, so you just go ahead and just checking the invoices. They just go ahead and first console when we send the invoice. This time want first actually, before we create everything, just go to this invoice here. So on this create invoice, we are going to just first I want to get this invoice data.user ID. So let me just console this console.log invoice ID, and here we have the invoice data and plus the table data. I want to see this one. Okay, and by the way, we looked at the invoice data. What was the value on the invoice data? The one that is on top is the invoice data. Let's just look at the details that we have on the invoice data. So we have the logo, and for some reason we don't have actually the user ID. Oh, and I think I just know maybe why. Is because by the time we send the request, it is still loading maybe the user. Okay. Yeah, you can see the key of user ID. I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing the user. We have company name, we have this all invoice, and then why are we not having the user ID? Okay, they just go and check the user ID. Okay, let me check the user ID. First of all, let's go to create here, the new, and here in our function we are just like here. I think this one, I don't know if you should just put await, like we have to wait for this to be set, because it actually takes in some time. I don't know if you should just put await for this to be set. Okay, let's see, and then we have all data here. Then I'm seeing here, of course, we have also to add the whatever we are just doing. We have to add the user ID, whatever we're just adding in all these. Just always, sorry, whatever we're just adding, we have to add the user ID. So just go and add the user ID in all these, all data, set combined data, and then try. So on the try is where we have this user ID, and I'm putting this form data, logo URL, and user ID, and to my surprise I'm not seeing it, and we're just putting it here. Okay, let's see. Create invoice, await, blah blah. So okay, they just now send now data, and this time we are consoling in our route. We are getting this invoice data. We are even consoling invoice data dot. I want this invoice data and table data. We can leave the table data for now. Just only put the invoice data. Okay, and we're also consoling the invoice data user ID, and then we can first pause all this process. Okay, we don't want to create anything at this point. We don't want to create anything. Okay, just have this data, remove this, and rows promise, we can just also comment this, and then here it just return the table data, maybe the invoice data right now, and then just send now and see. So I'm just going to go back to creating an invoice. Okay, create an invoice. Okay, just use fake filler and let's upload the logo. Okay, let's upload the logo here and let's upload this one and then click done. Okay, and I think that is okay. Just change here to 1 and just leave everything like that. Let's click create invoice. Okay, and just check on the console. Okay, just scroll down and just move this up again, and I want to see clearly. So we have here the details of them. What I'm wondering is that in the details we are sending, we are not having in any way the we are not having the in any way the user ID, the key to user ID. We are not having it in anywhere here, even when we are actually sending it. Okay, so what I can just do to actually confirm is on this new, just to confirm, is giving this a actual value. Okay, so if I just say user ID and then I say and then I say to 1, I just give it a value and I see if this is because it doesn't have a value. Okay, and just go back to actually submitting this actual thing. So yes, again submit this, the item description, just put anything here. Okay, can put this on to 0 and let's create invoice. Okay, and let's just check the details again. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so now user ID is actually there, user ID 1. Okay, so this is because, okay, and this is because the user ID delays to be picked, I guess. Okay, so let's also go back to the new. Okay, let's go back to the new. Where is this information? This information here. So just cut this and let me put it outside. I'm just going to put the user ID in state, I guess. So let's just put it in state here. So user ID, I'm just going to say set const user ID, user ID set user ID, set user ID is equal to use state, and so they say here, and this one I think we should do it in from the use effect. So they just have a use effect hook. Okay, I'm just going to have a use effect hook. Maybe I just put here before this, after this here, I just say use effect, or we could just use layout, whichever, I guess. Use effect. Would we have all the use effect? Let me first see. Yeah, we have use effect somewhere. And did we use? No. So just have use effect here, and use effect, it takes in a function. Okay, just like that. And then here it also has these here, and its purpose is going to be set user ID, to, okay, to, and what it should just use is the session. Okay, so you can just first check if the session exists. Okay, if session, so you just say here if, okay, if session, okay, dot user dot id. So you can just check if the id is there, and then we can say set user id to actually this id. Okay, so let's just go and see if this id is going to be updated. So I'm just going to go down somewhere and I will just console.log. So down here, let me just console.log user id, just like that. And let's just do this. Go to console. Okay, I don't know if this is run. First of all, on this, let's first see if the actually the id is not there on the user. Okay, so the id is not there. Okay, so we could identify the user using the email actually, instead of using the id. Actually, I'd not noticed that on the user object we only have actually the email and name. We don't have actually the id. Okay, so just use the email. Okay, let's just use the email. Yeah, let's just use the email because it does exactly the same thing. So the user id is going to be, instead is going to be the email. So here where we have user id, here let's just set this to be when the app loads, where is the use effect here. So this one can be user.email, because the good thing is this is unique. Okay, the only thing we need from the id, it must be unique. So this is enough, you know, this is good enough. So here let's just now see the user id must be now updated. Let's see. I don't know if we need to reload the page, but this should set the user id to the email. Okay, so I just reload. Do we need to reload the page? Yeah, I guess. Okay, are we having issues with use effect? Actually it is dot user cannot read properties of an undefined. So what I just think is, even this load is faster than this. Okay, so I'm just going to maybe remove this. I don't think it's going to be so much helpful. So let me just go here, instead of the use in this one, I'm just going to come and define the use id here. So use id const user id is going to be await, maybe yes use await session dot user dot email. Okay, so just taking the email, and I'm just going to say question mark here and also question mark here. Okay, and then let's just check if this is appending it the user ID now, since we have the user ID there. And let's see, okay, if it is appending any value here. Okay, let's just remove this. Let's just see now. This one should now go away. I don't have the use effect. Okay, it is loading. Okay, so now you can just come and let's populate this. Just add this fake filler. Let's upload the logo. Okay, just scroll down to the logo. Just click the logo. And the problem we are going to have is that the user ID, we had named it as an integer. Okay, we're just going to work on that, but let's first finish this. So just having that, just submit that, and we see. Okay, just check in the here what we are receiving as user ID. Company. Okay, so user ID comes as an email. So good. So right now we are receiving our user ID as an email. This is really good. So the only thing we need to do is changing one thing, is changing our I'm just going to go to the Prisma. Where is my Prisma? So I have to go to the Prisma schema here, and let me change the user. So here the user ID. So I have this user ID. Instead, let me make it this as a string. Okay, so I'm making this as a string, and it is complaining, and that is why this one should map to the email. References email. Yeah, so this user ID is now not referencing to the ID, but is referencing to the email in the user. Okay, yeah, so that is the update we have to make. Now if we just make that update, we have to shut down and run some things. So let me just shut down this here, Control C. I'm also going to stop the Prisma Studio. So just stop these processes, because we have to run two things. We have to run the first one is the migrate. Okay, we have to run the migrate, and meanwhile, as this one is stopping on this now, where is it? Prisma API, Prisma here, the invoice route. So let's just go and put these ones back. Okay, so we have the user ID now. So just go here and scroll down to here, and let's just remove those ones. And then we also have this here, the Prisma, creating the promise, and then also we have this one. Okay, so one thing we have to change here is to change this to float. This one should be a string now, so just leave this one the way it is. I don't need to be an integer, it has to be like that. And then they just go ahead and run these commands. Okay, let's go ahead and run these commands. So the first one, I think we should run npx Prisma migrate. a migrate dev, and maybe just say here name init. Okay, I don't know if that is the command. Just run that one, and this one is just going to push this one will push our Prisma schema back to our database, because we have updated the some fields, so we have also to update the database about it. Okay, that is the one thing we have to do. So the second one I'm just going to run will be now npx Prisma generates, so that it can generate the new Prisma client, so that it can also pick the latest updates in our database. And let's just wait and see if it is going to create this with no problem. Okay, just waiting for it to create. It is taking some time. Okay, meanwhile, let's be figuring out as it is just running here. We have, okay, I think it is running, and done. And so it seems like it did run the client. You can see here down it says generated Prisma client, so we don't need to run the Prisma client because it was also generated. So now one thing we have to do is, of course, to confirm that it can create the invoice before we move on to other things. Okay, just run here. Just going to go back this one and just run npm run dev. As I was saying, we have also to figure out on the fetching. So on this fetching now, where is the fetching? Let me reduce this. If you just look at this is the post, we have this get. Okay, getting invoices, we have to have a way of sending the ID this side. Okay, seems it is okay. Let me go ahead and refresh. I'm just refreshing, and let's see. It's loading. And this is the sometimes it is just loading the app. That's why it is good you put these loading spinners. You can imagine if it's just showing an empty page, no loading, no what, it gives a really poor experience to the user. But if it is showing a loader, then a user can wait, because you can actually just, even in the loader, you can add loading please wait, so that the user can be patient as it is loading whatever it is loading. Okay, so right now we still want to work on the creating the new invoice. I don't know why it is taking this long. Let me just try to reload the page. I don't know. Okay, so finally it has loaded. Now let's try to create here an invoice. Just create use a fake filler, upload. Okay, just upload this and click done, and then just like leave them the way they are. Maybe we can just change here to our logo design and just put it here 1, and we can just leave everything else the way they are. And let's click on create invoice. Okay, it says invoice created. Okay, let's check on the console here. On the console, it seems it has all this big huge object that it is sending, and I don't know if everything has been created. We can actually check in the database and the invoices if there is any invoice that has been created. Wow, so we have the invoice that has been created, and if you check the user ID, it is having the user ID, I guess somewhere. It should have the user ID. Okay, so the user ID is here and it is the email. Okay, let's check the rows if the rows were picked. Okay, so the row is there. It was only one. This is good, and the user is also in the database. So now the only problem we have is if we check on the invoices, is retrieving back these invoices. Okay, retrieving back these invoices is where the problem is going to be. Let's see on the invoice page and the invoices page, and we have our invoice retrieved very well, as you can see here. But what I cannot guarantee is if you just go to this one, we are saying get invoices. Okay, invoice.find many. So this, I think I should just leave it as a challenge to you guys, and to those ones who are going to buy the code, I think I will just update this for you guys. I feel the video has taken so much long. Okay, at least we have added all the nice functionalities. You can view again, you can view the invoice. Okay, you can view the invoice. Let's see if the viewing the invoice is possible, and let's send the invoice to make sure everything is still okay. Okay, let's just send this invoice, and I'm just going to send it to myself. Okay, I'm just going to click send. Okay, sending the email. Okay, this is to make sure everything we did in the invoice sent successfully. Let me just go and open the Gmail. So click on the Gmail and let's see if the invoice is there. Okay, so the invoice is here. You can click this and view invoice, and this to take us to our invoice. So the sending is really okay. So the task I'm just going to give you to those who are the viewers. Okay, the task I want to give you is when you are getting here. So here we are getting all invoices. That means we are getting all invoices, including for other users. Okay, so here you should just put before they include, you can put where. Okay, so you could put where, and then we could get access to the, so where we could just have like where user. So where you just put this, and then you have something like where user ID is. So here where user ID, is user ID, whatever. So the challenge is you can just use the params to get this from the params. So I'm just going to leave this as a challenge to you guys. You can just add this and then get this from the params. I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to leave that one for you. But the app right now is really looking good. The only thing I'm just looking forward right now, first of all, we can remove this print button. We only leave the printing to the person who is creating the invoice. The one who is viewing the invoice, we can just remove this functionality. I'm not going to implement it. If you want to actually implement this one, you can go ahead. We have already implemented it on the invoice page, the create invoice page. You can go ahead and create it also in this one. Okay. I can just go and maybe put it off under invoice, and this page actually is on action buttons somewhere on the components, and then action buttons. Okay, so the one of the action buttons is the print. If you just remember this one, the print download. So this one, I'm just going to first put this one off. Okay, this one I'm just going to put this one off. You can just go ahead and implement the printing on this page. I'm not going to implement it. That's why I did not send on the detailed page. Okay, the only thing that we should put, okay, instead is now the you can just go on the detailed page. Here is, we can just put this view invoices. Where is our, we can update the view invoice page. Just go to this new page, and let me just Control F, view invoice. Here. So let me just put a link, update the link here, and this one just going to send it on this invoice, so that if someone is just on the create page, they just go back to the create page. So invoice new. Okay, so if you just like on invoice new, just like that. And so in this page, we should just click on view invoice. So if you click on view invoice, it should take us to the invoice page, where you can navigate to your invoices and you can get the invoice. Okay, so this is great. This is great. It has been so good to do all this. So in the last part, I think we should try, someone requested that we try deployment.